Tonight I'm going to be talking about black metal and how I first started listening to black metal. Years ago, back in the very early 80s, there used to be a couple of record stores here in Michigan that sold a lot of underground music. I mean, underground, they sold a lot of punk music, bands like the Misfits and Samhain and the Subhumans and bands like that. Bands that basically back then they didn't get any airplay. Bands that their local radio stations were too afraid to play or whatever. They felt that their music was either too extreme or just too doggone weird to play on mainstream radio. But there were a couple of record stores here in Michigan that had a lot of this underground music, and they sold it. And I dug it. I would go there whenever I got paid and buy albums, albums upon albums upon albums, because I really dug music back in those days, as I do now. And one album I came across was Mercyful Fate's "Don't Break the Oath." Actually, this isn't the album. This is the tape of that. And this is actually the original one that I bought. And I remember buying this and driving in my car late at night and just listening to the ambience of this music and just thinking to myself, this guy really has something there. You could really tell that he was a practicing occultist. It wasn't just show like it was with these other bands. A lot of times, you would see people like Ozzy or some of these other bands. They'll put out this music that the evangelists would say was satanic or whatnot, and then you would see them on television being interviewed, and one of the first things they would say is, well, yeah, we tried to scare people or whatnot, but we're really Christian, which kind of made me laugh a little bit. But someone like King Diamond, he would go on these shows and basically say, I'm a Satanist, So I always respected that about King Diamond. That's nothing against Ozzy, because Ozzy, I dig Ozzy, and those other bands too. But I really dug King Diamond because King Diamond admitted to what he was. And those of you who know King Diamond knows that he's also a member of the Church of Satan. So he's really the real thing. So this was the first album that I got featuring King Diamond. As I said, this is Mercyful Fate with King Diamond singing. So this is the first one I bought, and then the second one I bought is another tape. This is a Fatal Portrait by King Diamond. This is actually his, I think this is his first solo album, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember buying this and also, thinking, hey, this guy, he knows his stuff, and he's the real thing. He's not just, singing about this just to make a buck. So I really respected that of King Diamond. And a lot of people today, they consider King Diamond as being one of the first wave of black metal that came out during that time. So I started listening to King Diamond, and then I distinctly remember this. I remember going to a record shop on 7 Mile Road, close to where I stayed, and walking in there and looking at all these albums by the band Venom. And I was like, who the hell is this band? And I remember looking, and they had like 10 albums at the record store. And I was like, how can these guys have 10 albums out, sing about all this stuff about, Satan and whatnot, call their first album black metal, and I've never heard of them, So at the time I only had like $20 in my pocket, and this was back when albums only cost $10. So I went and I bought this album and another album by Venom. Took it home, listened to it, and I was like, this stuff is really cool. It's heavier than the stuff I'm used to listening to, because at the time I was really into like Deep Purple and Rainbow and those type of bands. And this had a different type of feel and different type of sound to it, and I really dug it. So ever since then, I've always been a huge supporter of Venom. Then later on, I started listening to more of the mainstream metal bands or the thrash metal. I started listening to bands that weren't necessarily black metal, like Slayer. I guess they would be more thrash or whatever. But I really like Slayer too, because they were extreme and with the artwork on their albums and the subject matter that they were singing about. So I really had respect for them too. So, oh, then there was also the band Bathory. I started listening to them, and I thought they were pretty cool. Only thing I didn't really care about what they were doing was the fact that there really wasn't that much of a melody behind what they were doing. It was just mostly the guttural voices and the playing of the guitars 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, that's cool, sometimes, but when you make a whole album like that, and then your next album's like that, and it gets kind of boring after a while. That's why I always like Venom, because even though they were really hard and heavy and fast, I could always hear a melody behind what they were doing. So I've always been a fan of the first wave of heavy metal. Then I started, coming across other bands that were singing about, darker subjects, or more, writing songs about pseudo-satanic stuff. The more, not real Satanism, but more of the what you would call shock value Satanism, or something similar to that. And I kind of like that, because when I seen the guys with the corpse paint on, with the guttural vocals, I kind of got into some of that, the later black metal bands. One band that I do like, I like their attitude more so than their music, is the band Gogoroth. Um, when I listen to interviews from Gall, I think he's really intelligent. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do think he's sincere in some of the things that he says. And some of the things he says is really right on the money. And I mean, right on the money as far as Satanism is concerned. Some of it isn't, some of it is. Depending, I guess that depends on what type of Satanism you subscribe to. If you're subscribed to the Church of Satan's view on it, or you subscribe to another view. Anyway, I always enjoyed listening to interviews by him and the band. The music's okay, but it's, like I said, for me, being a classically trained musician, I sorry, but I gotta listen to some type of melody behind the music that I listen to. If there's one thing I've always said, is if the devil is a musician, or if the devil listens to music, he's a great musician, and he has a fine ear for music. So he's probably listening to more Wagner or Beethoven or Bach more so than a lot of heavy metal or black metal that's out today. But some of it I do like. I like a lot of the imagery and whatnot. So anyway, that's how I first started listening to black metal, and I still like it, but like I said, I prefer the stuff that has a melody behind it. If you're interested in reading a really good book on the subject, I recommend The Lords of Chaos. It documents black metal from its start to present day. Okay, so that's my view on black metal. So until next time.